Sigurd Brekhus, and I was born in Tolly, North Dakota. I moved up here with my folks, my mom and dad, and one sister in spring of 1913. My dad was born in Norway and my mom was born in Norway. My mom's name was Goodby.
Goodby.
Real dad, he died when I was just a little over a year old. It was Lars. And my stepfather's name was John.
Yes.
I went to grade 8, and that's as far as I could go because we didn't have money enough to stay away from home, and board away from home. We walked to school. We had a mile and a half to go driving along, and instead of following the road, there was a place where there was no crop now, so we cut across. We're driving along, and a buggy wheel hit a rock.
Oh my.
And the axle broke. So the corner I was sitting on driving a team fell right to the ground like that, and I fell out. Well, when I fell out, I took the lines with me, you see. And the horses were trotting. They weren't scared. They were old tame horses, but they kept right on trotting. But they didn't have any lines, and I had the lines down here with me, and my foot was caught in the buggy, and the team was dragging me, and the kids, I remember Esther kind of helped Lucy throw her out, and she jumped out. And the team was not being steered, but I was pulling on the lines, I guess, so they ran in a great big circle. And my sister met them when they come around and stopped them and unhooked them, and then they got it from the buggy. And I couldn't walk, my ankle was dislocated. I stayed by the Democrat when Esther walked over to Godfrey Anderson's place. And Godfrey Anderson, he went to Vidora to get a doctor because we didn't have any telephones or anything at that time. So the doctor come and took me home and straightened my leg out.
How did he straighten your leg out?
Well, he just grabbed it and click, and he put it back. Oh, did that hurt. The way I got started farming, I didn't even have money enough. I borrowed $100 from my uncle to make a down payment on the farm. Made a deal with the Hudson Bay Company to buy a half section of land from them. And I got the seed and the fuel from the municipality on relief to start out. I used my stepfather's tractor. I just started with my bare hand. The first year we had a complete failure. That's the driest year we ever had in this country, 1937. So most people didn't even get their seed back. I got a little bit of seed back. I think the first dance I met her at was at a country dance. I think it was at Bernson's place. And I just met her there. And I thought she was kind of nice, so I made a date with her. And that was in 1934. She worked for Henry when I was farming, and I used to go and see her there. Then it got to be so that nobody could pay wages, not even to a hired girl. So she went to Vancouver and lived with her sister.
And Henry was your uncle.
Yeah. Well, then we went together for 4 years. We got married in 1938. PFRA was building the Cypress Lake Dam at that time to dam off the water to store it. And they were paying for stones to rip-wrap it, to line the inside of the grade with.
Yeah.
And so I went to work and started piling stones. There was a lot of stones on my land, on everybody's land, I guess. Hollow stones and piled them up because the PFRA would pay for rocks that were piled up on your place. And I made square piles, and I got enough money out of them stones that I went to Vancouver and got married.
You hauled enough stones to go get married in Vancouver.
That's right.
That's a lot of love there.
Oh boy, that was a lot of stones too. Yeah, I got the logs up in the hills. I got them squared at a sawmill, and then I got a carpenter that lived in Robsart to build a house for me. I dug the basement by hand. There was no well on the place, but there was a place up in the coulee where the grass stayed green all summer, even in the driest years. And I thought maybe there's water there, so I dug down. Sure enough, about 2 feet down, I found water.
Oh my!
And this was high enough up in the coulee so I could pipe the water down where my new house was going to be. Mm-hmm. So I dug a ditch by hand 6 feet deep, and from the well down to where the house was going to be, the basement, and put in a water pipe. And we went ahead and built. Well, we had a kind of a building bee to put the house up, the logs, and then he built the rest of the house. About the only farm in the country that had lights and water, but we did have.
Do you remember the year?
It was 1944 we moved up there from Ground's place to Joy was 3 years old. Well, I kind of invented that. I put a water tank in, a bottle water tank, a galvanized water tank. I put it in beside the stove, and then I piped the water through the firebox in the old coal and wood stove and back again, so that when we cooked or had fire in the stove, it heated the water for the pressure system. And they built the dam at the east end of Cypress Lake. They used horsepower to move the dirt. They had dump wagons and horses. He went around and around. He went down to the pit and got a load on your dump wagon. Then you drive up on the grade for the dam and dump it and back down again. And I worked there for about a week, and then one of my horses died. So then I drove Louis Backman's mules for a day, but I didn't like driving mules, so I took the other 2 horses home, and then I went back and worked just with my hands. And I worked at kind of the same job, but instead of driving the horses on the scraper, now I was holding the handle and filling the scraper, and then follow it around. When you get up on the grade, you dump it and leave your dirt there and back in the pit and get some more. Oh yes, when that country was settled, it was pretty near impossible to get water out on the farms. They would have shallow wells and wells beside sloughs, and but there was a spring a mile west and 6 miles north of Robsart. There was a spring right from the time the country was settled, and it was water coming right out of the side of the hill.
Oh wow!
And everybody hauled water from there for years. We used to haul water when we lived at Graham and Grandpa's place. We'd haul water about 2 miles. We'd have a barrel on a stone boat. You know what a stone boat is? It's just some planks nailed on some poles to hook horses on. And water was pretty scarce. You sure didn't waste any when you hauled it for 2 miles. When Saturday afternoon come along, Mom would bathe the smallest kids first.
Yeah.
Then heat a little more water and add it, and the next bigger kid gets in, and then the next bigger kid, and finally we'd all had a bath. And he didn't throw the water away because it was precious stuff, so she'd save it in a bucket and she'd use it to mop the floor with afterwards.
Oh, neat.
There's a man in town here that wishes for water. I think he used, some of them use a rod, an iron rod, and some of them use a tree branch. They walk around, and when they get to where there's water in the ground supposed to be, this thing will turn down on it. It'll tell them. And that guy, he's that Herb Duncan, he's been witching for people all over the country, and he's been very successful. He finds wells sometimes on farms where they've dug many wells before and couldn't get any water, and get water. I still don't know if I believe it or not. flood didn't affect us hardly at all. I remember we went down and looked at the flat, and there was water right from the hills at Humphreys right up to the north side of the flat. There was water all the way across, but it didn't affect us much. We didn't have land in there.
Okay.
Remember the water cut a deep gully through our yard.
Oh.
From the hills, remember that?
Yeah.
But we just, Dad's place was at the bottom of the foothills, and just where the hills started, and that's where his building sat. I presume that was the year. I wasn't very old.
Yeah, I don't remember the years. First good crop we had was, I think, 1940. And it was a good crop, but it was tough that year, and we had to cut the grain down.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't dare put it in the grinder because damp grain will heat in the grinder. So we piled it on the ground, and it was down. So I know I'd have to market it the next year before summer was over because it would heat in the pile and spoil. So a good way to get rid of it. I sold some to feedlots in different places, but I decided to go in for pigs and feed it up. So I bought a whole bunch of sows for a pig, and I went into the pig business. I told my wife Ethel that any sow that had more than 12 pigs, she could have what was over. No, 10 pigs, I think it was. Well, them sows that lay down and have 12, 13 pigs. And she had a bunch of pigs too. And when she sold her pigs, she took the money and bought a piano. We had the Consul Hotel for 3 years, and he ran that for me, kind of like that. Mm. I worked hard. I farmed, and I raised cattle, and I worked for the municipality. But it was a good life. Yeah, I was councilman for 10 years, and I was reeve for 2 years. Well, I think working with horses and cattle was the best. I could ride a horse all day and just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was good. And you're out in the open. Mm-hmm. Farming wasn't quite so good. You stick in the tractor all day long,
Yeah. When you first started riding Prince, did you know then that you just loved horses, or?
Well, I knew I liked horses, but I didn't know much about them, and I pretty well learned the hard way. I made a few mistakes. I would do it all over again too. I wouldn't change anything. Even the kids, even my girls, I like them just the way they are. I wouldn't change anything. Yeah.
What a blessing that is to have a life that you just...
Oh, we had a good life at home. We had a good home, I'll say that. I'm sure. I hope Sharon agrees with me.
Oh, yes.
And we take trips just about every summer for a while there. We drive to Vancouver in the holiday season. We'd go to South Dakota to a family picnic. Mm-hmm. Yes, we had a good life.
I think that's what everyone wants, is to, as they go through their life, have that feeling. It's pretty special.
Well, it's kind of nice to think that if you had it to do over, you'd do the same thing,